Hello, and welcome to Tennessee Court Talk. I'm Samantha Fisher, Communications Director for the Administrative Office of the Courts, and your host for this episode. Joining me is Michael Navin with the National Center for State Courts, here to discuss the promises and perils of a rather sensitive subject in the court system right now, artificial intelligence. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Samantha.
Absolutely. When we talk about AI, that's such a broad subject, but really right now, the advancements in AI, we're kind of zeroing in on generative AI, these machine models. And there's a lot of talk about this. What could it do that could help? What problems could it cause that we need to kind of think about ahead of time? From your standpoint, studying this and talking to state court systems around the country, what role do you think generative AI could be playing in the evolution of court technology?
So, generative AI, just to be clear, as to what generative AI is, it's about taking data, large data, and creating new content. It's creating novel content, whether it be images or text or audio or visual. And with that, courts are really on. They're evaluating their processes to see how Gen AI can help within their court, really focusing on what their problems are to make it more efficient, not only for internal users, but also for the users of the court, the litigants and things of that nature. So we're looking at it, most courts are looking at this as a maturity model, where they're looking right now and they're finding things that are low risk but have high value. And that's really important. You don't want to dive in, start using generative AI for more high risk things that still may have some value, but there's so many low risk pieces out there that they can use. So for example, simple chatbots. This is kind of really the starting point of what a lot of courts are using for litigants. Chatbots to go out and be able to pay your traffic ticket much more quickly. Instead of having to be sent to, go to a website and have to search the website and then going to a link and then you have to go through all of these other steps. This is where you can use a chatbot to just basically pay your ticket right then and there through the chat bot, find your case. You could, sign up for driver's school. You could schedule a hearing based on whatever the schedule is like. So that's a real low risk, high value piece that is making it so that people don't have to come to the court to do something that really only takes a couple of seconds. So it's helping out those litigants. At the same time, we have chat bots that are more internal. Let's say people want to know HR policies. So you have a chatbot that's internal, specifically just built around internal documents and internal procedures. And so if somebody wants to know how much vacation time do I have left, and you can ask the chatbot and it'll tell you instantly. What happens if I lose my key card? It can tell you pretty instantly. So we're seeing courts develop that. We're seeing courts develop chatbots for figuring out, putting all of their processes, all of their civil procedures out onto this chatbot, to where then it makes it easier for a new employee to just ask a question instead of always having to lean over and ask the question to a more seasoned employee or going to a supervisor. So it's speeding up the training of employees too. Those are some of the real lower risk steps that I think courts are taking right now, and it's a very, very good. It's a very, very good step to take it. Taking it slow, even though the technology is advancing so fast, it's okay to not try to keep up with the Joneses. It's okay to just take things step by step and find things that are solving your problems.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say, and we know this from the court system, that there's such a heavy lift, the administrative role.
Yes.
And that if AI can help with that, with some of those more sort of tedious, time-consuming, laborious tasks, and free those people up to do more critical thinking kind of tasks, then that would be one of the promises of AI.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they could use AI in human resources. They could use it to build job descriptions much more quicker. Performance reviews. They could use that to build up those forms quicker. They could use it in budget and finance to process payments much quicker. So, those type of things. Procurement. So there's a lot of things behind the scenes that people don't see that AI can be used that can then shift employees to be used for more critical things, for more critical thinking pieces, and just allow the more repetitive things, the things that just drive people crazy when they work. Get through that, get rid of that so that you can focus on quote unquote, I don't want to use the word real work, but just, more work that needs a little more thought that goes into it rather than repetitive, right?
Mm-hmm. Michael, what do you think judges and lawyers need to know or understand about these large language models, this machine learning AI, before using it?
First thing is they should know is that it's not always right. AI is generative AI is not always right, but it always, whenever it gives you a false answer, it says it with such confidence when it's wrong. And
like my 11-year-old.
Yeah, exactly right. So they have to know that, at this point, these generative AI applications, they're great for a starting point. They're great for if you're just, instead of starting with a blank piece of paper, think of it as like a blank piece of paper, but it's a great way to gather information. When I grew up, I had to go to the library and look up the card catalog and then follow the Dewey Decimal System to find the book. Then I had to sit down and read, parts of the book and find the aspects that I needed for whatever it was I was researching. And we've, then changed that to the internet and searching that way. And now Gen AI is the same thing. It's increasing our ability to gather information much quicker. But we still need to use that thinking and that critical thinking to verify that the information is there. And so for judges and attorneys, they still need to know that verification, especially with some of the cases, with all of their cases for that matter, it's very important to make sure you're verifying what it is that you're reading and what you're submitting to the court. That's the very first thing that they need to focus on.
In articles you've written and in presentations I've seen you give, you emphasize the importance of having a human looped in.
Yes, correct. Yeah, and that's really that's such an important piece we're at. A human in the loop. Yes, AI can generate something, but you need to have that human there to still review to make sure it's capturing everything, that it's not hallucinating, that what it is that you're getting is accurate. So yes, the human in the loop. I don't know that. Maybe there's a time where we don't need that anymore on some of these things, but for the time being, I think that human in loop is going to be needed for quite a while until we get really, really comfortable with what is being produced, and until those models are so refined that it's very rare that something wouldn't be hallucinated or wouldn't give out inaccurate information.
Yeah, I want you to define that for me, because I've just been introduced to that term, hallucinations coming from AI. What does that mean?
So a hallucination is basically where it's providing you information that is factually incorrect, even though it may seem plausible. So maybe it sees something, like, for example, like maybe it sees something in a piece of, like the big example is back when ChatGPT first came out, an attorney confidently used ChatGPT to write a motion. ChatGPT confidently produced a motion with all these case citation, and that attorney confidently provided that motion to the court, and then the court confidently said, "This is all wrong. These case citations aren't even real." So now, how did it come up with unreal case? How did it just make things up? Well, that's kind of where it's, they call this the black box. You don't know how generative AI comes up to its answer, so we don't really know how, especially in those early days, how it produced a case that doesn't even exist. So that's a hallucination. It literally is a hallucination. It just made it up. So that's what a hallucination is, when it's creating something that doesn't exist.
And that's a great segue, because I think so far, when we talk about the administrative burden that AI could lift, I don't know many people who would say, "Oh no, I want to keep all the paperwork I have to do." Like that, that seems fairly uncontroversial. But when we move into that area of hallucinations, of attorneys potentially using it to create motions that are citing cases that aren't even real, or even in a more nefarious way, when evidence is created that is not real. Yeah. Are you aware of that happening yet?
So it's becoming more and more. The courts are starting to see these trickle in, where there's questions about whether evidence is real or not. And an example that I would give, and it involves a situation in Maryland where a principal had found out some information about an athletic director potentially doing something wrong with some funds, and the principal was going to basically turn the athletic director in or report it to the authorities for more investigation. Well, the athletic director, then what came out was this voicemail made all its rounds on the internet, on social media, of this principal saying racist and anti-Semitic things, and
oh my gosh.
and the principal was put on leave, and the principal was threatened, and his family was threatened, and then they brought in a forensic scientist to evaluate the audio, and it turns out that AI had created that. The athletic director had recorded the voice of the principal, and then just used AI to make up this audio that was so close to being what that principal sounded like. And then he was ended up. I believe it's probably the first case where a person used AI in a commission of a crime. So that's one example of using it, but there are potentials for it's just so easy to create something that isn't real anymore. It's so easy to, and you may see this in things like custody cases,
Yes.
voicemails and audios that may not be real. And it's like, how are courts going to deal with that? How are they going to authenticate that? And who's responsible for authenticating that, and how is that going to affect, delays? Is that going to cause delays? Is that going to? So there's so many unknowns at this point on this,
Yes.
but it's something that is getting through the courts, and I assume at some point these things will be weeded out. Yeah.
You have provided a list of recommendations for court systems, just trying to kind of wrap their arms around this. Where do we start? We hear these examples; they're alarming. What do we do?
I don't know that I have an answer as to what we do, and I think it's so foggy right now. The question becomes, let's say evidence comes in that's questionable. Well, then this brings up a question about a digital divide. To where if one person makes something up and the other person doesn't have the funds or the money to hire a forensic scientist to evaluate that evidence, well, but somebody else does have money to do that. Well, then is that fair? So where do we go from there? But are we going to start? Are courts now going to have to hire forensic evidence? That just sit in the courtroom? I don't know that that's feasible. I don't know if there's funding for that. I don't know if that's even the court's role. But it's really a foggy situation. Unfortunately, I don't know that we have an answer for that yet. Even over the last year that I've been looking at this, we have not really come up with a clear answer. And I just think that we need to see more cases out there that deal with this in order for courts to get more of a precedent and more reviewing on the thought process behind it and what to do.
And the technology is so quickly evolving too.
Right.
This has been a great kind of high level 30,000 foot conversation about it. For folks who are listening and they want to dig in more, I know the National Center for State Courts has some great resources available. Where can our listeners go?
So there's if you go to the National Center's website, it's www.ncsc.org/AI. Very simple. You can go to that, and that's the kind of the gateway to all the resources we have, where you can go and look to see what are other states doing with policy and guidelines and case law and decisions. And whenever we get new things in, we add it to that website. And we have all kinds of resources that we've produced, webinars, reports, and videos, and we have a monthly AI implementers forum that people can join, court staff can join, and it's a great place to learn what other courts are doing with AI. It's also a great place, since we have judges in there too, to really get a feel for what are judges seeing as they're that are coming up onto their docket. And so that's a great place to go to. And we also have a collaboration between the Thomas Reuters Institute and the NCSC on AI policy. And once a month we have a webinar on a various AI topic. And it's a great place. Again, it's for free. It's just once a month. I believe it's on Wednesday. It's on a Wednesday. And that's a great place to learn. You sign up for it, and you can actually, all those webinars are recorded, so you can go back and watch watch the prior ones too, to really get a sense as to what's going on. And the topics change every month, as they should. And sometimes things are rehashed, not because they're duplicating. It's just because it's changed, because the technology is changing so quickly.
Well, no doubt your knowledge is in high demand, and we appreciate you taking a few minutes with us this afternoon.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. For more information on the Tennessee court system, you can find that at tncourts.gov. Thank you so much for joining us.